to arise and take us into the promised land. And it's not going to be easy, as I said. It's going to be a battle. But we can win battles because we've won battles throughout eternity as babies. In fact, I sent out a tweet the other day to Attorney Benjamin Crump, and essentially said that this is a defining moment in the state of my father's dream. And the reality is that in spite of the verdict, in many respects, and I hope you can hear this in the spirit with which I say it, in many respects, it has less to do with Trayvon and more to do with all of us. Let me tell you why. Because as I think about where we are, my mind takes me back to April 3rd, 1968. The last words out of my father's mouth in terms of a public pronouncement. He said, "We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. And I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." Now that was a word from a prophet. And when prophets put words out in an atmosphere, those words remain in that atmosphere until someone grabs hold of them, embodies them, and begins to do something about them. And this year is a divine moment. And it's no accident that you, as Delta Sigma Theta, with all of this red, has come to our nation's capital to cleanse it. And I like to say, with the blood of Jesus. This will be an opportunity for us to define where we go next. In fact, it is incumbent upon us to make some necessary shifts. We're going to have to make some serious adjustments, my sisters. And I firmly believe that this next wave of change and transformation that hits our world is going to come from the leadership of women. Why I say that? My mother said, "Women, if the soul of the nation is to be saved, you must become its soul." Our nation will not be saved. The issues that we are dealing with will not be addressed unless we as women roll up our sleeves and collectively begin to go to work in our communities to reclaim them from those that would seek to destroy our young people, whether it be through sex trafficking or any form of violence and crime and manipulation and lack of adequate and sufficient education. We must make the necessary sacrifice and be the consciousness of people. God has been trying to awaken the people to rise up and take us into the promise. But we cannot, as I said, do it alone. We cannot do it independently. We cannot rest on our individual laurels, because when the children of Israel were about to go into the promised land, there were two tribes that had received their particular land, their grant, their possession, their ownership. But the command came to them basically to say, are you going to let your brothers go up and fight alone while you sit here and be comfortable with what you have acquired? No. We must join forces and join hands together, and collectively we have got to move our communities forward. There is no other way to do this other than a united front, and we've got to make sure that the mental power, the spiritual power, and the strategic power of women are at the forefront of this, because we already know that men cannot do it unless there's a woman who is a part of it. Men get distracted very easily, and I love my brothers. It takes a woman to come alongside of and make sure that our brothers stay focused. When we, as women, get in our rightful seats of authority, praying with each other, as opposed to praying on one another, when we are working together, as opposed to warring against one another, when we have our sisters back, as opposed to backbiting, when we are molding the next generation instead of meddling in somebody else's business, then the power of who we are as nurturers, as stabilizers, as energizers, and influencers can come forward in a very powerful way. We need the power of women like never before. It was women who made the difference in the 50s and the 60s. I don't care how many marches you saw. I don't care how many times the men were seen up front. The reality is that that movement never would have happened if it had not been for women.